Well, South Africa currently is in the middle of commemorating the annual 16 Days of Activism for No Violence Against Women and Children. Dr. Shaheda Omar from the Teddy Bear Clinic says being reactive to gender-based violence and femicide is important, but she adds with all the focus on girls and women, it's also important now to include the boy child by creating platforms that develop empathy. She says by doing so, they will become champions in driving solutions against GBV. Dr. Omar, welcome back to today. Thank you very much for your time again and your patience as we're dealing with that small technical glitch a little bit earlier. You were explaining when we lost you earlier, and I want you to recap quickly, that the importance of bringing the boy child along in order to develop empathy.
So it's indeed because there needs to be an understanding and insight into that these girls and women are sisters, are daughters, and mothers and grandmothers, and family or friends. I think the important thing to bring it closer to them, to understand, appreciate that these are human beings with feelings, and the fact that they have rights, and as being the male champions in this scourge, that they could certainly provide solutions to break down, to disrupt the cycle of violence. We want to engage them in dialogues, and we are already engaging in dialogues and conversations around rights and responsibilities, around sexual reproductive health and rights and bodily autonomy in terms of whose body it is, who owns it, who has a right to protect that body, and how can one prevent or protect the violation of such, gross and heinous crimes. So it's also challenging values and norms, addressing the values and attitudes, breaking down the stereotypes, the social constructs of masculinity, because often if we try and understand and interpret masculinity, we find that masculinity is often confused, where the two synonyms of aggression and assertion, where the two are actually confused, where boys and adult males see themselves to be in a position of power if they exert their aggression, not exert to be assertive. I think that there's some confusion around that. And these are the dialogues that we actually are engaging with our boy children that are in our intervention programs. But the programs that we are working with does not only work with the boy child. In the past, we worked with girls in the sexual violence initiative programs, and we realized that we cannot exclude an important part of the equation. So both girl children and boy children are brought into these dialogues where there is an exchange of experiences, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and the impact it has. And there's role reversals. We do a lot of role plays around the boy assuming the role of a girl and the girl assuming the role of a boy, and the expectations that society has imprinted and prescribed to them.
So your intervention, your campaign or your program is very much practical, because there's many voices rising in addition to yours at the Teddy Bear Clinic to say don't forget the boy child in dealing with the scourge of GBV and going forward. So you become practical in your intervention.
Indeed, I think, we are all very theoretical, and if we look at the scourge of violence, the boy and the men are often seen as the problem. And if we continue to label and identify them as the problem makers, we're not going to be able to break or disrupt that cycle. We've got to bring them into this fight of violence against women, where they can then identify what are the possible ways of addressing this to ensure the safety and protection of girls and women and children in general.
Yeah, the issue of being proactive. I know you've said that reacting to the GBV is important, but there's an issue of being proactive in order to prevent. There are voices now that are saying, focus on the boy child, but prevention is also important. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. We need to look at prevention programs, which we are already working and implementing at your ECD facilities as children as young as 3 years old, because children are being socialized at that stage and phases of development where they assume roles and responsibilities and assume stereotypes and expectations of the specific genders that they identify with. So working with young children across schools and, of course, even in the workplaces where adults are working and they need to be informed, because we know the more information they have, the more there'd be sensitivity and empathy and understanding of the impact of gross violations and what gender-based violence does. It doesn't just harm individuals, but it destroys families and disintegrates society, as we are currently faced with this huge challenge.
Yeah. Your intervention on focusing on the boy child is underway. You've mentioned there's dialogues and there's role play. There's a bit of practical thing. What are you seeing? I mean, what are you learning? Because for a long time, we've focused correctly on the girl child. Now you are saying as a teddy bear clinic, let's not forget the boy child. There must be some lessons you're picking up that will help you going forward, because this cannot just be an activity for the 16 days.
So the lessons that we are learning and that we have learned as we have worked with the boy child is that it's about the socialization, how they've been socialized from the cradle to where they're at. And of course, who is the primary principal socializer? It's the mother, the primary nurturer and caregiver, and the role and importance of empowering the primary nurturer is also critical, because if we find, in our engagements, we have found that boys see themselves to receive preferential treatment because of their gender. And they see that already, they experience that from their early formative years of development, and they continue to prescribe to that expectation and live out that expectation. So for them, aggression is often confused with, asserting themselves and feeling that it's their right, that girls will say no, but they're actually teasing them, and it's their right to pursue this in whatever way. So in terms of lessons learned, we also see that, boys have this misunderstanding, misperception of their roles and their rights. And it's, of course, a lot to be said about the way children are socialized in their homes and the whole history of patriarchy and the submissive roles that girls are expected to assume and remain timid and not be vocal and stand up and speak out and break the silence. So these are things that we have discussed, and we're learning as we go along that there are many other challenges that need to be addressed, but we need to work with the family. That's another lesson. One cannot work in isolation. One needs to work in context, work within the systems. So working within the family, working within school structures, working in the workplace, faith-based organizations, as you said. So I think even the community platforms are key and critical to engage in these dialogues.
So as we conclude in the next minute or so, Dr. Omar, what's next now for you as a teddy bear clinic? I mean, you've got all kinds of programs. You are not stopping your focus on the girl child and women. You are now bringing on the boy child with these interventions you've explained beyond 16 days, because I guess this is going to be an ongoing effort on the part of the teddy bear clinic. So what's going to happen beyond 16 days?
So beyond 16 days, we have had a number of children that have gone through our interventions, and I'm referring specifically to the boy children who are champions in this fight, in the scourge against violence of women and children, and are willing to stand up, speak out, and break the silence, because silence is violence, and they actually want to mentor. We've even got some pastors on board who have had their children who were part of this gender-based violence scourge, and they've all come to the party, they've all come to the fore, where they want to continue reaching out wherever and however in engagement with people in the community. So this is a start. I think we're in our infancy stage, and hopefully more will come our way. The more we engage, the better it will be. The more opportunities for dialogue, the more opportunities for information, knowledge, and power.